I get bewildered by people who think there's more to it than just like eat your fruits and vegetables, make them 75, 80% of your diet, and start there. And for some reason, like that's, oh, it's way more complicated than that. No, it's not. It's more complicated than that if you're getting what you think is knowledge off of social media.
Hi, welcome to the Tarun Stevenson Leadership Channel. I'm your host, Tarun Stevenson, and we are all about helping you lead, communicate, and grow to your full potential. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite podcasting app, don't forget to subscribe and follow so that you can stay up to date with all our latest episodes. All right, here's the latest episode. Let's get into it.
Well, hey, everybody. I'm here with Scott Abel, who is a fitness expert who's had over 5 decades in the fitness industry in weight loss, physique transformation, bodybuilding. And it's so good to have you on the show today, Scott. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we just get started by getting to know you? You've got quite a lengthy and varied career. Why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourself, where you've come from, what you do now, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Blue collar background, got into bodybuilding, was very successful at that. That transformed into being a very successful coach, even an online coach before there was such a thing as online coaching. Left the bodybuilding world, concentrated more on people who focus on health, especially in this day and age with COVID, et cetera, people with weight issues, eating issues, that kind of thing. Ended up authoring several #1 best-selling books on Amazon, that kind of thing. Lots of products, at my website, et cetera, training products, diet products, as I mentioned, the books, et cetera. So I don't go too into a 5-decade career because you end up stuck in one decade or another.
Sure.
Oh, the 80s, look at his body. He was 260 pounds with 6% body fat. And, but that was a long time ago. And,
Sure.
it's not, like I said, it's not who I am and what I do now, but I was also an academic for a lot of years, and I won some academic scholarships for academic performance and intellectual proficiency and things like that at university. So, when I look back at it now, being almost 60 years old, I see that, I was a high achiever, probably because I was an overachiever for most of the things that I tackled. So I think that'll probably resonate with your audience. But so whatever I undertook, I became quite the name at doing it. So
Sure.
you know.
Well, we're honored to have you on this show, Scott, and I want to delve into some of your thoughts on leadership and high achievement. You do a lot of work around the price for success and achievement, and understanding why many people don't achieve the levels that they want to. But I suppose probably the most easy and obvious inroad to our conversation might be to just talk about health and well-being for professionals, for leaders, in the time of COVID when so many people are locked down, have restricted access to exercise. Why do you believe that it's more important now for professionals and leaders to have an awareness of their health? How does that affect their performance in their businesses and in their leadership?
Well, you'll get some people that tell you it doesn't affect their performance at all, but they have no
Yeah.
context. They have
Yeah.
no, boundary to compare it to. So if you're only used to eating junk food and not sleeping at all, then you'll say, well,
Yeah.
I'm still productive. I did this, and this.
Yeah.
But the thing about health is it's a slow moving cautionary tale, right? Like
Right.
people who get heart disease and have issues like that, these things are 20, 30 years in the making.
Yeah.
And it's a little too late after the fact. People are starting to realize it's a little too late after the fact to think you can go back and correct something that's already been 30 years in the making.
Mm.
But that's the mindset that people have. And I mean, that goes back as far as the 50s and 60s with smoking, right? Lung
Yeah,
cancer is going to happen to everyone else. It's never going to happen to me,
sure.
and until it does. So we call that the 0/100% rule. In other words, people think there's 0% chance that a pending risk is going to happen to them until it
Mm.
happens to them. And then there's 100% chance,
Sure.
but they don't recognize anything in between. So a lot of it is just a lot of awareness in the modern era is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And I think leaders especially should be people who practice that. And a lot of them just they don't. And I get a little myself, with 5 decades of experience doing what I do, I get a little teed off at people who are of the do as I say, not as I do kind of leadership.
Okay.
I just find that completely pretentious. If you don't walk your talk, then don't talk.
Mm. Mm.
If you're going to be a leader, lead by example. It's the same thing with parenting, right? Books and books,
Sure.
research and research has been written about parents model behavior. Parents that model behavior they want to see in their children is a lot more effective than chastising and pointing and warning your children about something you don't want them to do when you do it
Sure.
yourself. In
Sure.
other words, overweight parents are likely to have overweight kids, even though they tell them don't eat this food, don't eat that food.
Yeah.
Parents who drink or smoke are likely to bring up kids who drink or smoke because they're modeling and imprinting
Yeah.
that on their children. And I think leadership has the same kind of potential for imprints, depending on how responsible the leader wants to be. Because right now, I mean, with Insta influencers and all that kind of nonsense, I mean,
Yeah.
these people aren't around to really try to improve others. I mean, the Insta influencers are all about what it does for them, right? They're not
Yeah.
about
Sure.
what they're giving to the actual consumer in terms of benefits of health and well-being and wellness,
Mm.
et cetera, et cetera. So you really should be someone that practices what you preach. And then what COVID has brought to the forefront is no matter what you do for a living, if you don't lead a healthy lifestyle,
Mm.
preventative maintenance is what we call it, then you're in a high risk category. And I see more and more of that people, as of last March, the amount of people writing me who were now like scared straight, basically.
Mm.
It was like,
Okay.
oh my God, how did I let this happen? Coach, you coached me 25 years ago when I competed in bodybuilding. Now I'm 50 pounds overweight and,
Right.
I'm afraid of COVID. I've got type 2 diabetes and I got this
Mm.
and I got that, that kind of thing. And yet what they do for a living, maybe they're the boss or they're
Yeah.
the leader or whatever. So,
Mm.
I just think health is just so much to the forefront now that
Mm.
people are becoming more aware than ever. And on a micro level, an individual level, but also on a macro level in terms of, climate and all those kind of things as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the awareness of health. Probably now more than ever, we have this awareness of the need for health. There's more media attention given to health than ever before. We understand the human body so much better, yet health problems are at an all-time high in Western countries. Obesity is a growing concern in most Western countries. What do you think the disconnect is between awareness and the way in which we've gone as a society further and further away from personal health?
Well, I think a lot of it is ownership and responsibility, and
Okay.
people balk at those words. They
Yeah.
nothing is, that people want to be victims of a lifestyle of convenience and entitlement,
Yeah.
and you're not the victims of those things, you're the recipient of them.
Sure.
So you don't have to accept those kind of things or adopt them or internalize them to such a degree that it affects your health in a negative way.
Mm.
And then you become trapped in this maze that people are led to believe is really, really difficult to get out of. And
Mm.
it's not. The answers are actually very, very simple. Simple doesn't mean easy. but
Mm.
the answers are very simple. So um, I get bewildered by people who think there's more to it than just like eat your fruits and vegetables, make them 75-80% of your diet, and start there.
Mhm.
And for some reason, like that's, oh, it's way more complicated than that. No, it's not. It's more complicated than that if you're getting what you think is knowledge off of social media. If
Mm.
you look at real knowledge, I mean, I watched documentaries and stuff from the 50s and 60s that talked about eating your vegetables and fruits. I mean, this
Mm.
isn't rocket science, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we know, I talked about it in a few of my books, like Beyond Metabolism and Understanding Metabolism. Through the evolution of the industrial age, there was no obesity till the 1970s. And
Mm.
what was the big spike that led to the obesity epidemic that continues today? And it was the proliferation of fast food
Okay.
availability, right? And
Mm.
the availability and convenience of food without labor. So you
Yeah.
can, take things out of the fridge, you can order them delivered to your door, you don't have
Mm.
to expend any calories in preparation, et cetera, et cetera. And
Mm.
then people think that the weight loss thing should be easier than it's going to be. So
Okay.
again, that long-term creep up thing, if
Yeah.
something took like no one gained 40 pounds, no one's 40 pounds overweight in 3 weeks or 4 months,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If that happened to you, it happened gradually over time. But
Yeah.
what do they expect in a solution? They expect the solution to be right now, this minute.
Yeah.
So then they end up getting caught up in just in lies, basically, like low carb. I call it low carb lies and the politics
Mm.
for profit. Low carb nonsense, keto nonsense, all because that kind of stuff will make the scale move, but that you're
Mm.
not losing fat and you're doing all kinds of not good things for your metabolism.
Mm.
So then it gets, what we've learned also, a big parallel for me that I've talked about recently is, you know, like I said, I'm 5 decades into this now, so I've seen everything there is to see, and I would like to think I know everything there is to know right now with what we have available information. But what I've seen, I used to be bewildered, like, why do people keep turning this into rocket science?
Mm.
And then I realized with social media in the last 5 years, witnessing the political landscape, that if you want to sell something or you're worried about your own work or your own job or something, then throw confusion into the mix.
Yeah.
Just keep confusing, just keep giving them disinformation and keep telling them wrong information, with the end thing being that you've got the solution and nobody else really does.
Yeah.
And that really helped me sort of come to grips with, the gap between why I could never understand why people made this more complicated than it ever was, right?
Mm.
Because like I
Mm.
said, when I took up bodybuilding, I went right to the top. And then when I left that world, I left it. There was nothing else to accomplish there. So, and to this day, I find people, oh, it's so complicated. It's so, all I hear is all this confusing information. Well, from a certain segment of the health and fitness industry, that's very deliberate, right? Like, I
Mm.
mean,
Mm.
we know, if we look at um, political landscape, that you've got people who pay millions of dollars to fund research to say soda isn't bad for you, sugary
Yeah.
drinks aren't bad for you, and all
Yeah.
these other things. And then it just becomes a kind of sea of ridiculousness if you're an expert like I am, and you're looking at it from the outside looking in,
Sure.
and saying, how can consumers be this ridiculously cognitive dissonance, kind of like separated
Mm.
from reality to the point where um, it just sounds ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
someone just wrote me yesterday who's afraid of COVID, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, really poor blood markers, almost
Mm.
100 pounds overweight, but so afraid to eat carbs. And then when it sends me a diet history, it's like bacon and pizza and whipped
Mm.
cream in the coffee and
Mm.
butter, butter covered this and that. And I'm like, how is that the solution to what you're
Mm,
describing? It's not. It's, but yet they've been fed this constant media diet that, oh, carbs, 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 like fear
mm,
of food, fear of food. And it just becomes ridiculous from the level of the
sure.
outside looking in and trying to understand the consumer mindset. But the consumer mindset also, consumers also have a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
to own up to.
Good. Okay, I want to delve into the consumer side of things and playing the victim. But before I do, let's just talk about the misinformation that's out there. And sometimes it's promoted by the fitness industry itself. And one of the
Of
confusing
course.
things that I have seen, and I really had a wake up call a couple of years ago. I was going to the gym every day, but not seeing any results in weight loss. And they advertise, come and lose weight, come and lose weight, come and lose weight. And I'm thinking, I'm working out, I'm doing my best to eat right, but I just can't see any results here. And one day I had a personal trainer who was honest enough to say, 80% of weight loss happens in the kitchen, not in the gym.
Yeah.
But nobody's saying that. Most people are saying the opposite. They're saying, work out 6 times a week and then you'll lose weight. And so I come away thinking, okay, I was trying to do what I thought was right, but I had it all backwards because of the lack of clear information. Why do you think that there is this? I mean, maybe the obvious answer is profit, but the fitness industry is supposed to be concerned with the health and wellness of people, and yet the fitness industry seems to buy into this misinformation train. Is it just to keep people in a cycle of obesity or unhealth, so they keep coming back and paying their money to get fit? What's
Yeah,
the
yeah, I think that's some of it. I think at the highest levels, it's deliberate. When I was doing bodybuilding, I had plenty of endorsement contracts with supplement companies. I never took any of the supplements. I never
yeah,
believed in them. And at the time, I always rationalized it. I always said, well, I mean, hopefully your readers sorry, your followers are old enough to remember Michael Jordan and stuff. And I used to say, well, yeah, I don't take supplements, but people who see Michael Jordan on the box on a box of Wheaties don't think he plays basketball better because he eats Wheaties. Like
sure,
nobody, So I rationalized it away that way, but then it just got to the point of ridiculousness where I would see how much the supplement companies lied about
yeah,
what was possible. Everybody that I knew that also had endorsement contracts were also taking steroids and things like that, as I did, which I talked about freely, back in
sure,
those days. So at the highest levels, but what I also see is a trickle down effect where, personal trainers who work in a gym aren't really leaders in the fitness industry. People
yeah,
think they are, but they
yeah,
buy into the same crap, right? Like
mm,
they go online and they follow the most popular, like I won't mention certain websites, but they all fall in line and follow the certain websites and they eat it with a spoon and then they feed
yeah,
this misinformation and outright false information to their clients, and then the
yeah,
clients don't know any better. You're paying someone for a level of expertise, right?
yeah,
So you don't know any better. The trouble is people are majoring in minor details.
yeah,
So if you're trying to break into an industry in the age of social media where pretty much every industry is completely saturated, no matter what that industry is,
yeah,
and you want to make a name for yourself by majoring in minor detail. Oh, do this exercise this way. And then,
yeah,
think about 12 or 15 things while you're doing this
yeah,
one simple exercise that just moves a lever back and
yeah,
forth. But
yeah,
you should think about 100 things while you're doing it. And then they do the same thing with diet and they do the same
yeah,
thing with supplements, all because they're trying to differentiate themselves in an already saturated market.
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
lucky enough because I came along before social media and before those
Mm,
things. So I had a name for myself being in the magazines and all that kind of thing,
mhm.
and then writing the books and those kind of things. So I kind of had a leg up. But now you watch and it's just sort of a sea of ridiculousness of, no, you should listen to me because I say this. Oh
Yeah,
no, you should listen. Don't listen to him. He said that. But really it is kind of that, but it's also these 5 other things. But you know what? The sky's either blue or it's not.
mm,
And, I think people are getting caught up in the mud of it all, right? Oh, like they start getting enthusiastic about like I said, majoring in minor details. If you're a professional, a working professional, a leader, you've got a job and you've got limited time to commit to health and fitness.
Yeah.
You don't need to know what someone with 8-pack abs and 2% body fat who lives in the gym and does nothing but work out 6 days a week for 2 hours a day. You don't need to follow their regimen because you can't follow their regimen. And
Yeah.
who says they're healthy anyway, just because they look that way? Do
Yeah,
a search on, do a YouTube search on bodybuilders who died before the age of 50 and watch the scroll list that comes up, or
Wow.
professional wrestlers, or the rest of it, right? So we tend to get caught up in this, the package, even on social media. How cool is someone's avatar and their package. And then you'll listen to the information. The first thing you'll do is, wow, that package is really attractive. Look at all the bells and whistles and the shiny objects. And then you'll look and say, how many followers? They got a lot of followers. They must be legit.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you know as well as I do, you can buy followers on Instagram and all these other places. And then people get confused that information is knowledge. Information is not knowledge. Even Einstein said information is not knowledge. So they get caught up in all this, this person has 100,000 followers and they said X, and this person has 100,000 followers and they said Y. There's a new term that just came out. I've been listening to it in the last week or so because of the political landscape and what's transformed over the last several years for people paying attention outside of their own lives. It's called media literacy, teaching people how to differentiate legitimate information and context. Like all of a sudden 5 years ago, we had these new 2 words, alternative facts. There are no alternative facts. There are facts.
It's a fact or it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So we live in a pretty wild world of, how does the consumer know who to listen to? And how do they know who's spewing garbage? Because if you can speak well and you can communicate well, this is another thing we've learned over the last several years, right? In the public landscape. And as long as you have enough of a following that you can keep spewing the sky's not blue, the sky's not blue, the sky's not blue, you're going to collect a certain amount of followers that'll be like, I've been saying that for years, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because I find that in the academic industry as well. I've done a lot of academic research and I found that as I was delving into that more and more, there's just this, because everyone wants to differentiate themselves or they have to differentiate themselves to get the accolade that they need. Majoring on the minors is such a big thing, and trying to twist the outcomes or twist the perceptions of what is being said. And I know with my own research, I had to step back and say, hang on a second, there are some foundational things that have been true for centuries. And only now we're starting to say, oh, that's not true. And we're trying to, find things in the hidden details. And yet, if you go back to the basics, for so long, those basics have kept people in check. They've kept societies in check. They've kept families in check. And yet all of a sudden we're obsessed with these fads or these new ideas. And then, with a media that's also obsessed with headlines and clickbait, we seem to just be getting a stream of misinformation that is hard to decipher the truth from.
Clickbait was exactly what I was just going to say as you were saying that. Like I was just showing a friend of mine just yesterday a clip from a movie called So I Married an Axe Murderer. And it's just this small little 2-minute clip where I was trying to point out to my friend, we used to laugh at people who went on about conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah.
There's this scene where Mike Myers is sort of like making, claiming that there's 5 people in the world who run everything and it's a secret. Yeah. It's just hilarious. But we used to look at those magazines at the checkout counter and, I had an alien's baby and all this, and nobody gave it follows or likes but social media sort of put all that kind of nonsense on steroids, right? So, and you see something with clickbait, even on legitimate sites and stuff. So again, this media literacy, what to click on and why. What are you really looking for? Are you looking for the shiny object, the bells and whistles, or are you looking for legitimate answers.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I used to say, even back when I first became a big name in the bodybuilding industry, I used to say, don't ask me the question if you don't want the real honest answer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want the real honest answer.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear that you don't correct 4 decades of ignoring your health and your body
Yeah.
in 12 weeks. You can do a 12-week transformation contest, but 12 weeks after that 12-week
Yeah.
transformation, guess where you're going to be?
Back
Right
to
back
same.
where you
Yeah,
started. So,
absolutely.
yeah, so there's a lot of things about, um, being proactive rather than being reactive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I had this conversation, or I did another Skype call earlier today, and I was having this conversation. It was like people were like, weren't you like, isn't it so surprising with the COVID and everything? And I was like, no, it wasn't surprising. As a matter of fact, Bill Gates predicted this 8, 9, whatever many years ago. You can just Google it. He said the biggest threat to humankind is not nuclear war. And he showed a bomb. He said, is this here? It's a virus.
Yeah.
This was way before we knew anything about COVID. But
Yeah.
governments or industries, and here's the lesson, industries that are for profit, they don't want to change anything if they're making a profit until it's no longer making a profit. So
Sure.
they're very, very reactionary. They're not proactive. Like, I used as an example, I watched a movie that was from the early 90s the other day. And in the movie, it wasn't part of the movie storyline or anything, but what was mentioned in the movie was climate change. No one's doing anything about climate change. It was just part of a conversation that had nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that was the early to mid 90s. We're now
Yeah.
21 years later. And now, because of the threat is upon us, now people are up in arms. Like, we got to do something about this. Well, we should have been doing something about this 25 years ago. And it's the same thing with your health. As you get older, you've got less room to maneuver to take things for granted in terms of what you're putting into your body, because everything you put into your body is programming it for a very specific result.
Okay. All right. So let's have some straight talk then, Scott. For the average guy or girl who maybe like me is middle-aged, in my 20s, I was fit. I was working out all the time. Then I got married. Then I had kids, and the slow slide into unhealth came. I was eating worse because, and making excuses because I'm busy or, tired and whatever else. And now you find yourself mid-40s, realizing that your health is out of control, need to do something about it, and you're desperate to do something, but all the solutions that are being promoted seem to be just either quick fixes or just scams that don't work. What's the straight talk for someone who just needs to get back to basics and do something about it without buying into these lies that are being promoted?
Well, the first thing I think is, I like to talk about the triangle of awareness. I call it a triangle of awareness, where you have mental, emotional, and underlying it is the physical or actionable, like what you do on our habits, basically, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is to have a balanced isosceles triangle of mental fitness, emotional fitness, and then wellness that underlines it all. The first thing that people have to do, and you described the typical scenario, that's exactly what I see. I'm lucky because a lot of people aged with me. So a lot of people who were already following me in their 20s and 30s kept following me into their 40s and were like, man, I got to do something. The first thing is, like you said, acceptance, not resistance.
Yeah.
Right? Accept where you are and how you got there. All right.
Okay.
I stopped putting me first, and there's a price for that, right?
Yeah.
There's a consequence to every action and every habit. So, the old saying is, our progress is only going to be as effective as our lack of bad habits.
Yeah.
So ignoring your own needs on a day-to-day basis is basically a good predictor of how you're going to end up health-wise, body weight-wise, body fat-wise, all those kind of things. So the first is acceptance, and that has many layers. Okay, stop saying, how did I get here? Like it's some big mystery. You just explained how you got there, right?
Sure.
Like, so it's not a mystery. And like I said, if you do research on human genetics,
Mm.
you realize that a 20 to 30-year-old body is very resilient to all kinds of things, to alcohol, to drugs, to injury, to attack, to virus, right? Like who
Yeah.
gets the sickest from the virus,
Older
right?
people. Yeah.
Right. So we need to accept as we're getting older, we don't have that resilience anymore.
Yeah.
Then the next level of acceptance is, what are you really willing to do about it?
Yeah.
You know, because people are willing to try a habit change until it becomes inconvenient.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, you know, I worked hard all week. It's Friday night. I want to go out for dinner, or I don't want to cook, or I want to, you know, fine. Keep telling yourself those stories, because we are the result of the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
So you either want to change or you don't want to change. But the flip side of that coin is that defeat does not equal failure. So just because someone's tried and failed a bunch of times, unless they get into the emotional self-judgment of it, which tends to be a North American thing, right? Like, oh, you know, I'm so guilty because I had a piece of cake or something like that. Unless they get into that sort of frame, then every time they're defeated by one diet attempt, they should learn something valuable.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't work because it was too restrictive and it made me too hungry, and then I ended up overeating later, and you know, blah blah blah, whatever that lesson may be, right?
Yeah.
Or it's, I shouldn't have this food in my house because I'll eat it, so I'm not going to have it, whatever. But learn something from each attempt at an achievement. Learn something when you don't achieve it. And if you study high level achievers, as I have for decades, from all walks of life, what you see is nobody succeeds right out of the gate. Nobody just like, oh, I'm going to take up financial success, and I'm going to succeed right out of the gate with no setbacks. But that's what people expect when they undertake an adult goal like weight loss, right? Oh, there's never going to be a setback. And then if there is a setback, they just quit. That's the only failure, is to quit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I call that the infantile ego, where we have these adult goals and considerations, but we treat them like spoiled children, like we're spoiled children. Well, that didn't work out, so I quit. You know, and the example I used to use in my seminars and such is like, think of a baby learning to walk, a toddler learning to walk. The toddler falls down all kinds of times. They don't just give up on walking and drag themselves through life crawling the rest of their years. They intuitively learn something from that. Even if they fall and bang themselves and end up crying, they get up and they try to walk again, and sometimes they fall down and it's hilarious. Everyone laughs, but they eventually learn to walk. And it's the same thing with these sort of adult goals. You have to learn that every misstep and trip and fall is part of a process of eventual achievement. You know, nobody comes out of the gate. The difference is whether someone is passionate enough about it to stick with it. And most people, when it comes to sacrifice of indulgences, most people aren't passionate enough. They're just not passionate enough. So I remember one of the very first interviews I did, when I didn't even realize I was becoming a big name at the time, but you know, people wanted to interview me in bodybuilding. And I remember the interviewer said to me, okay, and he was all about, you know, like magic exercises and magic potions and, you know, magic supplements and all this. There's a level of mentality back then. And he said, okay, what are the top 5 that someone has to have to like achieve what you did in bodybuilding? And I said, heart, 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 and heart. You know, I said, most people just underestimate what it takes to be good at anything.
Yeah.
You know, if they've never done it before. But if you're in it and you're in it with other people who are in it, then you understand about passions and things like that. Right. So, and like I said, I study people from all walks of life. And in terms of passion, I remember watching Becoming Warren Buffett as a documentary. And he talks about his paper route when he was like, however old he was, and how collecting money became this this thing for him, right? And it's like, and then he becomes the richest man in the world. Those things aren't unconnected.
No.
They're 100% connected, right?
Yeah.
So, you're not going to decide at age 45, if you're broke, that you're going to be Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there was a passion there that lit his path all the way through his life that said, this is the one thing I want to do. And he's going to do it well, right? And he did. So you can look at that in the sport world and all those kind of things. But enough people, we don't even realize the extent to which the digital world of entitlement and convenience has imprinted on us.
Sure.
So that we want what we want when we want it, and anything that sort of doesn't agree with that, even if it's a goal of ours, then we have to shove that aside for the immediate rush, right?
Yeah.
So and that's a problem, and it's even a problem with leaders, because I coach people who are coaches themselves, and I think to myself sometimes, how can you be coaching people? You're a complete mess. So people need to sort of stop looking for recipes, and when it comes to recipes, like the most beautiful 5-layer birthday cake has many ingredients, but you can't make it without flour. And the same thing exists in weight loss goals or any adult goal. You can't achieve that goal, that recipe, without some modicum of self-respect.
Yeah.
So you're either going to start with no self-respect and look to gain it through the outcome, which you're going to fail, or you're going to start with just enough self-respect to make you want to have that goal to begin with. And then by following the path, you keep building that self-respect and building it because you're following the path, and you're saying, oh, I can do this. I did it for one meal. I did it for 1 week. I did it but you have to learn something from that. And that's why I always say the process is the goal and the goal is the process. Don't tell me about 40 pounds or 50 pounds. Tell me that you did all right today, and then we'll see if you do all right tomorrow. And then, I'll explain to you. If you don't, let's ascertain why you didn't do so well tomorrow as you did today or yesterday or whatever.
Yeah, so it's really the old adage of to eat an elephant, you do it one bite at a time. Focus on the process or the steps involved rather than the big accomplishment that you're aiming for at the end.
Yeah, I mean, just even if it's a faulty process, you're going to learn something from it, right?
Sure.
But people think they're just going to, if there's a path that they have to walk, they think they're going to get into a car and drive there instead, and it's just not. Especially in adult aging bodies, that's just not how things work. Yeah. So most of the time, not most of the time, a lot of the time, I will have clients who are making good progress, but they're frustrated with their progress, even though it's a realistic level of progress. And then they sabotage themselves because their expectations aren't real.
Yeah.
So they start out with these unrealistic expectations. They're going to have 6-pack abs, or they're going to wear a bikini for the first time in 30 years. And they're doing great, but it's not by some kind of false image they've created in their head, right? So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about unrealistic expectations in just one moment. Before I move away, I know there are going to be listeners that are saying, okay, Scott, give us the brass tacks. You said that there's a lot of misinformation in the fitness industry. What are the things that really, just at a fundamental level, what is the flour that we need to be aware of? Working out, eating, with all the fads that are out there. Talk about basics of health and wellness, or just weight loss. What are the things that you need to focus on?
Well, one thing, you referred to it earlier. No one can out exercise a poor or inconsistent diet. Okay. No one ever has. Good. No one ever will, unless they're like genetic elite specimen in their 20s. Yeah. And exercise is overestimated. You could go on any websites where someone is passionately devoted to weight training, passionately devoted to running, passionately devoted to yoga, passionately devoted to Pilates, and you will see before and after pictures that someone sustained for decades. So what does that tell you? That tells you that there isn't one way. Yeah. Right? So
Yeah.
it's the old saying, methods are many, principles are few.
Yeah.
Find out what those principles are. And those, you know what those principles are? The 3 C's: consistency, compliance, and the other one is confidence that comes from those 2 things.
Yeah.
So consistency, compliance, they all reorient, refeed, reboot each other. And that's what it takes. And then when it comes to the diet strategy, let's just stop the nonsense. The more fruits and vegetables you eat, the more you crowd out other stuff from being possible to eat. So, I've written books on metabolism and things like that. And yes, you can make it a lot more complicated than that. But if someone has 40 or 50 pounds to lose, just start there. The basics that I always say is no one ever got fat from eating too many apples.
Right.
Show me anybody that says I gained 50 pounds eating too many apples. It's not possible, right? So that's me saying, let's get real about getting real.
Yeah.
This isn't new knowledge. This isn't rocket science. This isn't the nutrition world has unearthed this, but I see it every time I go to the grocery store. And the thing that offends me the most, it's always a woman's magazine, like Woman's World or something like, I don't know what it's like where you live, but here in
It's
Canada,
the same. It's exactly the same.
every week at the checkout line, lose 20 pounds in this many days. And this, they don't say lose this much fat. They don't say, it's always a magic cure, special keto for kids, or, and it's just getting so ridiculous that you would have to be someone who has a lot more wishbone than backbone to want to believe this stuff to begin with, to look at that and go, oh, I'm going to try this magic solution of, a promise, right?
Yeah.
Not a fact. But a promise, right? Which we've seen in the political landscape for years now, which like this whole point that I'm trying to make is, if we're paying attention, we learn something from it. Instead of being gullible to it and falling for it, we learn something from it. We learn the power of a repetitive message. It doesn't even have to be true. If it's repetitive and we hear it enough, we start to, if not believe it's true, wonder if it might be true.
Yeah.
To the point where someone will avoid eating an apple, but have bacon instead. Bacon and eggs is better breakfast for you than, like oatmeal with blueberries. I mean, it's just, I mean, really, we have to have this conversation. I mean, just, I just don't get that, that cognitive dissonance where, the other thing people need to do is stop hiding behind this. Stop hiding behind, well, there's just so much misinformation out there. It's so confusing. No, that's you looking for a way out of saying, well, I didn't, if you really look at it, is really that your excuse that you've put on the 40 pounds and you've never been able to take it off because there's just so much confusing information out there? Is that why you're having pizza and sugary soda on Friday night and then continuing through the weekend? Because what the hell? I mean, does that have anything to do with the misinformation where you say, screw it? No, it doesn't. So like I said, if the main ingredient is self-respect and you start building regular habits around that, where the other thing from entitlement culture and convenience culture, which we're all affected by, don't get me wrong, I'm no better than anyone else. But when you stop thinking that things should be a certain way and you start limiting yourself, all these other choices that don't lead you where you want to go. If it doesn't lead me to where I want to go, then it's not a choice anymore, right? I'm not going to make that choice because I've been making that choice for this many years, and that's how I got here. So, I said in one of my books, it's the difference between people who elevate something to the next level. So if you look at vegetarians, for instance, who are vegetarians on an ethical, moral level, let's say animal rights or climate change or whatever, they're not going to be tempted to eat animal flesh. They're just not tempted by it. They're not going to be. But if you look at someone who's trying vegetarianism as another diet, then that's real easy to be tempted by burgers and fries on a Friday night. The one who's elevated it to an ethical, moral level has underlined that with a self-respecting thing, whereas the other one who sees it as a diet, as a means to an end, they can abandon that any time for the next available, quick fix, shiny new object that comes down the pike, right? So, and then
Yeah.
we've seen that, people who believe that eating eggs and bacon and burgers with cheese without the bun is somehow some magic weight loss solution, where no, that's, that's actually the opposite, but okay. So,
Yeah. Gotcha.
you know,
All right.
it
So let's
common,
talk about, sorry, go on. I cut you off there.
no, I was just going to say, like, when common sense is so uncommon that nonsense becomes common sense in certain pockets, where you go where you want to hear a certain message, not because it's true, but because you want to hear that message.
Yeah.
Like body acceptance, like that's another one for me.
Sure.
Being in this industry and seeing all the people that I've seen who've suffered serious medical, well, some are dead, some have had heart attacks, and they didn't get a second chance to diet, right? But you go to these body acceptance sites where people are 100 pounds overweight, and it's, my health is fine, and I accept myself the way I am. And really, you want to have that discussion, then have it with a health professional. Like, don't have it with each other. Don't have it with each other, because that's ridiculous. So anyway, sorry, I got
no
off.
No, look, this is the sort of stuff we need to hear, and you're pushing all sorts of buttons for me as well, because like the average guy who's struggled with weight loss, I'm always looking for that. What's the quick diet that's going to help? Try the keto, try the this, try the that, and it's good to hear straight talk, and I think it's important for us to hear straight talk. And so I appreciate you saying that, Scott. So you mentioned in there about expectations, or unrealistic expectations, and why that gets so many people stuck. And we've talked about influences and how they're creating these idealistic images that people get hooked into and fail to recognize the effort that goes into getting there. Let's talk about unrealistic expectations a little more. How does that affect us, not just on a health level, but just on a performance level in any area of our life?
I think one of the most frustrating things for me is that things have sort of downgraded so much that we now see mediocrity as exceptional. A mediocre result is somehow something to be celebrated. Now, I'm not talking about extremes. I'm not saying everyone should aim for some extreme. That's also an unrealistic, expectation, right? But we've got to accept that, extraordinary goals require extraordinary efforts, right? Extraordinary outcomes require extraordinary efforts. No one ever achieved something rewarding by accident, right? No one ever broke the record in the marathon accidentally. No one ever went to 4 Super Bowls because they were on the right team at the right time. Like, but we fail to grant that when it comes to our own expectations of how something should be, right? So we want, sort of like you said, the easy, the quick fix. But it also starts with, what's a realistic expectation for me right now, given my age, given my, if I get this from ladies all the time. They're in their 40s, they're premenopausal, or they're in their 40s, so their metabolism slows down a lot more for women than it does for men at similar age. And they're looking at Fitness Bunny, social media, Instagram sites, and saying, I want that. That ship sailed, especially if they've had kids and they've had this and that. Like, I hate to break it to you, but I don't hate to break it to you, because I'm, I'll deliver the honest message to people who want, like I said, don't ask the question if you don't want an honest answer, right? But anymore, people don't want the honest answer. They want the prop up, right? They want the promise. Like, just keep promise me the results, even though they're unreal in my head, and I'll keep following you to the nth degree, even though the evidence is right in front of them that it's just not possible, right? So if I have a client who's doing everything expected of them and they're not happy with the results, then their expectations are unrealistic. This is what your body wants. Oh, but my friend Or I know someone who knows someone who's my age and my height, and they did this. Well, that's their genetics. That's, you're in this particular predicament in your particular body with the parents that you selected, or that selected you or gave birth to you, right? So all these kind of things factor into this, going back to the acceptance again. Where am I at? What do I need to do? And are my expectations real? As a coach, I'm the one who tends to reel people's expectations in.
Right.
My best clients are people who will say to me, I just want to feel better and have more energy. Those are the best clients because they will fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
But the ones who are, they want a number on a scale, they want a certain dress size by the next high school reunion, or those are the ones who will become a complete mess because it's all about outcomes and the investment in the process is just too much.
Okay, so how do we differentiate between using, say, genetics or our age as an excuse to stop working? Oh, I'm not going to lose weight because of my age, and setting expectations that are realistic for who we are and where we're at. How do you pass that out so that it doesn't become an excuse for not trying?
A self-inquiry for me has
Yeah.
always worked, and latching on to specific mantras that you can think of in your head right away that will do a cognitive restructuring, like literally change the channel of the way you're thinking in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I get clients to do is to say, am I doing all I can?
Yeah.
Like, so they start getting real about the process, right?
Yeah.
They'll check in, and this is happening and that is happening, because none of this happens in a vacuum, right? Like, I can give someone a great diet strategy that they should be able to follow, and I can give them a good exercise regimen that fits their lifestyle, which is very important. That's another topic. But life still happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like, in the last year, I had clients were doing great. Guess what? Like, I had a couple clients, both their parents got COVID. Right. So they had to, like, they couldn't see them. They couldn't do that, and some of the sadder stories, like both parents went into the hospital, only one came out, that kind of thing. That's going to throw a wrench into the perfect process. Right. So there is, what's the old saying? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
So they need to stop the compare, contrast, compete.
Yeah.
Catch yourself when you're in compare, contrast, compete. Like, I will tell people when they pull up a bodybuilding picture, or I'll use a bodybuilding picture of my past to make a point about diet or about training or whatever. But I don't compare myself to who I was then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm almost 60. Guess what? There's certain realities for me just as there is for everyone else. So I don't do compare, contrast, compete. I don't go on some other, I don't type into Instagram hot male 60-year-olds and see males that look great so I can go, oh, poor me, I don't look like that guy who lives in the gym, or what. So the worst thing people can do is, which society wants them to do, that's what Instagram and stuff is built on. What's everyone else doing? But I've seen that to be the downfall of so many of my clients, where I've advised them, look, you've got to get off social media. It's killing you. Like, it's killing your this person and that person, and like, compare, contrast, compete. All you can do is devote yourself to the process at hand. Forget about everything else is noise. Devote yourself to the process at hand. And that's the story of most people who have achieved a goal, and that they don't equate defeat with failure. They're like, oh, damn, life slammed me hard on this particular attempt, but you know what? Like Buddha, fall down 7 times, stand up 8.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but it's become too easy to live by a quote card or a cliche or whatever. Oh, I'm going to send this to all my friends, and it says something like, fall down 7 times, stand up 8, and someone's going through a tough time and says, oh, this was great, this really helped me. It only helps you if you take action on it.
Yeah.
So eventually you have to reinforce your actions with the thoughts that keep you wanting to do those things.
Yeah.
right? So you want to get up the next day and eat fruits and vegetables. You don't want to fight against, but I really want pizza and ice cream, right? You want to get to the point where you're being sincere with your self-talk so that you want to eat fruits and vegetables because you want to feel healthy, look as good as you can, for the age you are, or whatever the genetics you have, right? But too many people, they're living in this North American mindset of resistance, that their whole goal every day is to wake up and resist urges for, ice cream, resist the urge for pizza, resist the urge for snacks, or chips, or chocolate bars, or whatever it is, right? But that's the wrong mindset. What's the old saying? Resistance is futile.
Yeah.
But this is sort of the North American mindset way, that everything is a battle. And I've always said to people, no, it's not. Because if you get in that ring, let's say your battle is eating issues or food issues, your battle is weight loss, and that's how you perceive it in your head. Don't forget, we are the result of the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
So even if you think it's a battle, and you go 15 rounds in that battle and you win, you come out on the other end with a decision. Guess what? In that battle, you've still been punched for 15 rounds. You're still showing the battle scars and the wounds of that experience.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is to choose to not to get in the ring in the first place.
Right.
That it's not a battle, right? It's a choice. It's a decision you make. Make the decision as an adult and not like a little kid.
Yeah.
So that when the next shiny object goes running by, you're not like, oh, temptation got the best of me.
Yeah.
You know what? Your path to achievement is going to be marked all along the way with nice, lazy boys for you to decide to sit in and do nothing instead.
Yeah.
Right? That's the truth. So you're going to have to realize, follow the path, realize there'll be obstacles, there'll be walls, there'll be temptation, all along the path. Every good story, even going back to Moses and Jesus, is the story of walking a hard path and facing temptation. This isn't new, right?
Yeah.
Let's stop pretending it's new, or even worse, the arrogance of the entitlement age. Let's stop pretending that my particular situation is new. You don't understand. No one's had it like I had it. Like, I had so many people in my career who tell me, yeah, but you don't understand. I crave food differently than other people. My cravings are way stronger than other people's. No, they're not. You just like, but if you tell yourself that story enough, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to believe nonsense. Right.
Yeah.
So, these things to me are self-evident, and they're very obvious, and they're commonsensical, and they're right in our face when we choose to go like this and go, I don't see that. I want to look over here instead, right?
Yeah.
And part of my job as a coach is, people, I offer for my services one-time diets, one-time workout programs, and one-on-one coaching. And the majority of the time, people will say, well, I ordered a one-time diet, and then I'll look at their assessment information and I'll say, you know what? A diet from me isn't going to serve you. A diet from no one right now is going to serve you. You need one-on-one coaching. Why? Because coaching goes a level deeper. Coaching is direction, it's guidance, it's accountability, and it's support, right? Good. Just like parenting should be those four things, right?
Yeah.
No kid ever raised themselves in a vacuum from the age of 3 to a healthy adult, right? You need guidance, you need support, you need accountability, you need direction. So a lot of the times, look at leaders. Look at leaders and mentors and the new president. Guess what? He was vice president. And then he was in this, he's been chasing this for how long? 50 years?
So
50
true.
years, right? I've been doing what I've been doing for 5 decades, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes an investment. And I think people need to stop looking at outcomes and look more at the investment, right? And look at it that way. It's an investment opportunity in what? In health, in well-being, in self-satisfaction, in self-direction, but stop pretending that it all happens separate from your real life,
Yeah.
like, because your
Yeah.
real life is going to throw challenges, right? It's going to throw, like when all the gyms shut down because of COVID, I saw people who thought, wow, I don't have to commute anymore. I don't have to go to work. I'm working online like we're doing now. This is great. And then
Yeah.
I had people like completely went the other way, depressed, deflated,
Mm.
eating junk food as a distraction because they're depressed and deflated. And then what does
Yeah.
eating junk food do? Makes them more depressed and deflated. So they have this like vicious, negative feedback loop. And you go, can't you see that you're not, you're self-medicating with something that's making it worse, not better.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the time it's talking people out of their own narratives.
Yeah.
Right. So, and if you look at and study people that have achieved, like I mentioned Warren Buffett, but you could study athletes, you can study actors, or anybody that's made it on a stage and stayed there, you will see the narratives they told themselves, not just to achieve that goal, but to stay there. Like what just popped into my head, the Canadian comedian Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Remember his, I don't, where you live, if that's a name you recognize, but
Oh yeah. No, Jim Carrey. Everyone knows who he is.
yeah, sure, household name, right?
Sure.
And part of his narrative was when he was like had no food to eat and all this stuff, he wrote himself a check for $10 million and kept it in his wallet, right?
Yeah.
These are the story. We are the result of the stories we tell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, he couldn't share that with anyone else. They would have thought he was an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. But then guess what ends up happening, right? So, but I don't want to also lead people into this thing about, oh, it's all about, positive thinking and positive, like, because that's a bunch of horse shit too.
Yeah.
Like this, all this, like just, will it into being. That's not how things work either, So knowledge isn't power. Knowledge that's acted upon is power.
Yeah. So good.
And
so good.
yeah. And knowledge
Yeah.
that's acted upon consistently is power.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I'm telling you anything new, but I'm telling you like what 5 decades of experience have proven to me over and over again is that the secret is there are no secrets.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott, I just love the way that you've just been real with us. You've just told it as it is. And, for many of us, including myself, we need to hear that occasionally. We need some straight talk from those who have been before us. And I'm just so grateful that you've taken the time out to talk with us today. If people want to find out more about what you do or maybe get in touch with you, what's the best place to find Scott Abel?
Social media is Coach Scott Abel, and the website is scottablefitness.com, and the email is scott@scottabel.com, but it's ABEL, not LE.
Great.
So those are good places to start. And then there's on my Scott Abel Fitness site, you could have access to my books or my video products, or of course my blog archives where I write about this stuff all the time. So,
Right.
This is the kind of stuff that I like talking about, whereas other people, again, who run blogs and stuff, they want to tell you about, do this, not that, eat this, not that, five magic solutions to your weight loss. I don't do that. I try to talk to people on a real level of what's really going to get you there. So that's the kind of thing, like, I say to people all the time, if you think you're only going to feel better about yourself 50 pounds from now, you're never going to get there. If you feel better about yourself now, that's the path to getting there.
Good.
Right. And then they'll be like, well, how do I do that? Well, the guidance, the support, the direction, and the accountability.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys, you've heard it from Scott. It's straight, it's real, it's down to earth, and I encourage you, go and follow him, go and check out his blog and everything else that he is doing right now. And we are going to put those links into the show notes and make sure that you can access that very soon. Scott, thanks so much again for being here.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome.
Hey, Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you got a ton of value out of that episode. Don't forget to let us know what you thought in the comments. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover next time, we'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone that would benefit from the content that we produce, please like and share this channel. And we look forward to having you next time on the Tarun Stevenson Leadership Channel.